I am going to have to just start bullet point answering questions, and in the future you guys can actually leave comments of stories you would like me to elaborate on, because I'm realizing this is going to be so hard to be able to cover everything and tell you guys about it. Is just going to be impossible in the depth that I want to. So if you're curious about some of the adventures that I went on, I'll make a special vlogs about it in the future, especially over on the vlog channel. But I'm gonna have to start answering things bullet point if I'm gonna get through all of this stuff and all of the things that we've done. So, questions. K-Fern, who's another one of our awesome patrons, asked, what's your favorite swag you picked up? And that would be this bowl. This is a really beautiful piece that we actually got from the British Museum. So this was in one of their several gift shops, kind of the more adult gift shop where it had replicas. This is a replica piece of a Greek pottery bowl. And we just really fell in love with it because it seemed to sort of represent a lot of the vibe that we picked up when we were in the British Museum, and we wanted to get something that we would be proud to display, kind of like as world traveling adults, you know what I mean? So we picked this one out, and I am so glad it made it home in one piece. It is created in Greece. It's Athenian pottery. The Athenian pottery, it actually like even is written on the bottom by the person who made it to look kind of authentic, which I thought was really cool. But it's just a replica piece, and the owl, which reminds me so much of Artemis and just kind of that concept of wisdom and the muses, just really stood out to me. It's my favorite piece. It was a little bit pricey, but it was our special thing to sort of, you know, that special piece that you bring home to represent travels that you have done as an adult, that you have traveled the world and you have done something special with the one you love. And it is definitely my favorite. We saw a lot of pottery. We wandered and wandered the British Museum over and over. I think we went 3 times altogether, and unfortunately a lot of it was closed, but we had a wonderful time. And I think most of my favorite things that I brought home and most of my favorite memories actually come from the British Museum, and that's because I had a non-stop talking awesome historian by my side. So where a lot of it may kind of go over your guys' heads if you go, because you don't know the significance of this or that, or why this piece of Chinese porcelain is amazing because they would need to have this temperature for this many days to get that perfect color, and how did they do that 1400 years ago? I got all of that information right by my side, so that was really helpful, and I think that's why so much of the British Museum is part of my favorite memories. I've actually been joking with Chips that we should travel to different museums and he should help me make a podcast where he just describes and talks about why this piece is so cool, why it's so amazing, and just gets people excited. So I'm trying to get him to do that, but you know, he is kind of working on his PhD right now. He's a little busy. But we also got my other favorite piece, this frog from the British Museum, and this frog is actually just completely awesome. Look at him. He is from a print that is actually from the Edo period in Japan. Matsumoto Hoji is the one who made him, and he was created back, the frog from Mikagafu in 1814. We got to see this buddy, and there's just something about looking at all of these more serious pieces, contemplating their position in civilization, and then turning and staring at the frog and just seeing him. There's something about him that just made me smile and continues to make me smile. So he actually hangs up in our bedroom now, and I was so tickled by him, and I just thought that he was so awesome that we actually, there we go, we actually went into the gift shop and I got postcards of the frog, and this is actually the special postcards. We got tons of them. Like, I just grabbed the entire stack because these are the special Patreon postcards that went out for last month for all the postcards that I send out every month, and I just love it because there's something about him that I just can't stop smiling. So that was definitely one of my favorite pieces too. And we also picked up, like, we got a lot of stuff from the museum. I have some washi paper earrings, which I have seen in a lot of places, but now I finally have a pair of my own. They're in green washi paper. It's actually paper, so I need to be very careful with them. And they are green cranes, so I will have those memories when we are from there too. And I also got, I don't even remember what's in here. It's been so long. Oh yeah, the cat pendant. I have a necklace of a very special cat that they have in the Egyptian section of the Natural History Museum. And that cat is a beautiful statue. You can probably look it up online. That's made, I think, out of jade, but the cat is really gorgeous. And there's a lot of debate of if this cat statue was for a religious purpose, or because it lacks a lot of the usual religious symbols, if it was for somebody's pet who they wanted to memorialize as kind of like a personal note. And I think that's really beautiful, because what often happens in history, and Chips points this out all the time, is you lose the human element. Everything has to be for a serious reason. They created this for some deeply profound religious purpose. And actually, there was a human element there too. There was art, there was spontaneity. It may have been that the resources were limited, so you didn't want to do really fancy things unless it was for a grander purpose. But there was still a human component to it. And so when we looked at the cat statue, perhaps it was for a religious reason, perhaps it was just to show off wealth, but it's kind of fun to imagine that somebody really loved a cat, maybe that cat, their cat, and they wanted to remember them, and they had the wealth, the money, and the means to be able to make a statue to do so. So it's kind of fun to think about history that way too, and Chips is really good at being able to pull that in without over romanticizing it. So that is why I got the cat pendant, and I really love it. And speaking of cats, wow, I kind of went a little hog wild at the Natural History Museum. I got a bunch of postcards that represent different pieces that we saw when we were in the British History Museum, including this beautiful Egyptian piece from the marsh landscape. And this is actually a tawny cat pouncing on birds from 1350 BC, and it's from ancient Egypt. So there's more cats right there. I got this rhino piece from the museum as well. I like picking up the postcards because they're a fast and quick way to maybe set up things around my office to really inspire me, really remind me of why things were so cool. And I actually talked about it on Instagram, but one of my favorite things were all of the rhinoceroses that I found. They were so ridiculous. The old concept of what a rhino looked like. I have a few pictures of different statues from around the world and through history of what people thought rhinos looked like and what they did. So I have several of those. I have more of the prints that they have as postcards that I really fell in love with and just wanted to have around my room as decorative pieces. So we've got some really famous pieces. Unfortunately, we only saw a couple of the really famous Japanese prints because they were redoing the area. And I also got some really cute Tale of Flopsy Bunnies from Beatrix Potter, which we didn't see anything related to it in the museum, but they had this postcard, and I figured that was a very British sort of thing to snag. So those are, oh, and then I forgot I got this guy from the Natural History Museum. Really cute watercolor of a hazel dormouse, which is actually one of the creatures that they had in the Creatures of the Dark exhibit that we went to, which was totally worth paying for. So that was really fun. I would say those are all my favorite pieces. And that's actually what Pixel Fairy asked, is what was your favorite place you visited? And I would say, after looking at all of this and thinking about it again, the British Museum. You do have to like stand in a big line waiting to go in. It's free to get in. You stand in the line so they can check your bags and go through security. And then once you're inside, it can be a little crowded, especially around the Rosetta Stone. That's like the magnet. Everybody is up against the Rosetta Stone. But just walking it with Chips was probably my favorite memory. And there were other places that became really special, like walking through Hyde Park and finding chickens. Again, I'm gonna have to go a lot faster, so these are just stories you guys can ask me for more elaboration about later. But that was the very first thing we did in London, was get off the Heathrow Express from the airport, walk through Hyde Park, turned a corner, and suddenly I had breakfast with chickens. It was amazing and magical, and I will tell that story later. Maybe I'll do a bunch of mini stories on my vlog channel so that I never forget those special moments, especially because I wasn't able to record anything because it was a family trip and that was like part of our deal. But yeah, so my favorite place, definitely like British Museum, Hyde Park, walking through it again and again with our friends, walking through it with Chips that first morning, sitting down and having breakfast with chickens within 2 hours of arriving in London. It was so peaceful and beautiful. And also, my other favorite place to go was definitely the Botanical Garden, because I finally got to see the Victoria water lilies, which are these gigantic huge water lilies that are like 3 feet across. They have enchanted my imagination ever since I first discovered them as a child, and I think they're absolutely fantastic. They're beautiful, beautiful plants, very buoyant, very huge, and they're in a tiny little greenhouse called the Lily Greenhouse that's extremely hot and humid inside, by the way. And the Palmer house, was it the Palm House at the Botanical Garden was fantastically cool. It literally felt like being in a jungle, which also means we went in on a nice cool August morning and it was like walking into the most intense hot humid sauna I had ever been in. But it was totally worth it for all of the bamboo and all of the plants that were growing, and there were even totally ancient spiral stairs that had to be like 100 years old. You could climb up to walk along probably a 100-year-old little ramp way so you could look down at all the trees, and it had to be like in the 100+ degrees with 100% humidity up there, but it was a really fun and surreal experience. I couldn't even take pictures of it because you would take any lenses out and it would completely fog over. We had to hold the hand of our friend who was wearing glasses and guide him because he couldn't see because they just fogged up completely. But being inside of the Botanical Garden was my other favorite place. There was actually room to stretch my arms out in the Botanical Garden. And London, one of the things I didn't expect is that it was super crowded, which actually goes into the culture shock things. And holy cow, one day I'll get these vlogs right. One day I'll be able to go a lot faster. So I'm just gonna go boom, 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 and I'll kind of mentally pick some things out and make some mini story vlogs that I will put over on the vlog channel, because there's no way I can get through all of these memories the way I thought I could, elegantly and smoothly. So I'm gonna keep going. Botanical Garden, absolutely fantastic. And while we were at the Botanical Garden, I actually picked up a few things, one of which is this squirrel, which I'm really in love with. He's absolutely fantastic, and he is carved out of a special nut that I have started hearing more and more about. But he was on clearance because nobody wanted this cute little squirrel, and the nut that he's carved out of is now known as like mock ivory. Let's see if I can, there you go. It's now known as mock ivory because it does look a lot like ivory, and it's trying to be used to encourage people to replace ivory, to really pull away from trying to get into ivory and elephant hunting and everything like that, rhino horn, etc. And I really love him because you guys know how much squirrels mean to Chips and I when we live here, and we have all of the fox squirrels and red squirrels and gray squirrels that we really kind of get to bond with. So I was really excited to find him, and he was on clearance because nobody wanted him. But the gift shop was really fantastic at the Botanical Garden. Oh, and what did I get over here? I don't even remember. Oh, this pretty necklace. And I got this really pretty necklace at the Botanical Garden too, which I also think was on clearance. But it was a bunch of gorgeous flowers that were in resin. And it turns out this necklace and several other pieces that you'll find in a lot of the popular tourist spots in London will be at the other ones too. I found the same necklace and matching earrings at the British Museum and at St. Paul's Cathedral later. So there's a big theme between a bunch of the places, and they seem to have a lot of the same sort of things in the gift shop if they're not made specifically for that spot. So if you're kind of iffy about something and you're like, if I see it again, maybe I'll get it, you probably will see it again and you'll have a good chance to kind of change your mind. But while we were at the Botanical Garden, got a cute little pen, because now I can remember all of the leaves, and whenever I look at it, even though it's not a very like palm tree sort of pen, I'm gonna remember the intense humidity of the palm house and how amazing it was. I'm gonna remember walking through the whole big beautiful garden at Kew. We were there for 6.5 hours, pretty much from the morning to almost when it closed, and we had run out of food. And it was amazing. There was enough room to stretch our arms out. There was a log playground that we dashed across. I got to hug a redwood tree. We had a really great time. We went with just one of our friends who wanted to go, and all three of us had a fantastic time. I found a peacock just all of a sudden, walking along, looking at roses, looking at cork trees, looking at all of these specimens that are, some of them over 100 years old, and gigantic huge trees that never grow that big back home, and some of them were specimens I had never seen before. and there was so much space, which was so nice after being in the big city for 2 weeks. We did Kew Garden almost at the very end of everything, and it was so nice to stretch your arms out and just have elbow room. And we laid out on the grass and ate our food. It was awesome. I really loved Kew Garden, so it's definitely one of my favorite places. And if you're like Chips and I and you're not really into the big city scene and you need a break, Kew Garden was totally worth it. The train ride, or excuse me, the, oh, what's it called again? The subway, it's not subway, the underground, the tube, there we go. The tube ride from where we were in South Kensington to Kew was only about half an hour, and it was very relaxing, and the gardens were 100% worth it. So I highly recommend it if you just need some space and you're in London, and Hyde Park feels a little bit too crowded as well. So that was really cool. I loved Kew. I really, really loved Kew. It's definitely way up there on my list. I'm checking everything. Okay, good. All right, like I said, I can elaborate on the stories, and I will in the future for my own benefit, if nothing else. Going faster. So, and also Echo the Animal Lover asked, what was one of your favorite peaceful moments? And I will say breakfast with chickens, which I will tell you guys more about another time. The basic gist of it is within the first 2 hours of arriving in London, we had walked into Hyde Park straight from Paddington Station, where we got off of the express from the airport. We had to walk to our Airbnb on the other side of Hyde Park, so we were like, yeah, we'll just walk. It's like 6 in the morning, and we walked into Hyde Park. We saw a whole bunch of ring-necked parakeets, which are not native, by the way, to London. So it was a little bit like, is the jet lag hitting us? When you would look up and see green parrots fly overhead and gigantic ravens, huge pigeons! Pigeons! There's pigeons there that are quite hefty. And then we were just walking along the path, and suddenly we heard a gentle clucking to the side. And we turned off the path and met the chickens and spent the most peaceful, like 2.5 hours sitting down and resting from the big international flight and eating our breakfast with chickens. And I will tell that peaceful story another time because it deserves its own moment. It was one of the most peaceful moments of my life, actually, and I will cherish it forever. Also, Sanika, one of our patrons, asked, did you see any free-running Icelandic horses? And that jumps to the end of our trip. When we were coming home, we actually found a airline called WOW Airline, which was so much cheaper than anything else that we were looking at for flying back home from the States. And it turns out it's cheaper because every single flight that you take on WOW Airline coming from Europe and going back into the States, they stop off in Iceland and you have a layover of quite a few hours. We decided just to go for it and have a 22-hour layover. So we arrived in Iceland at the end of our trip. We drove in the pitch black darkness, which actually was like only for 2 hours because it's sunny like 18 plus hours of the day in Iceland right now, which was really cool. But we arrived at like the 2 hours it was dark. We got in our rental car, drove to a hotel, slept, woke up, and spent the next day in Iceland. And it was one of the most magical things I have ever done and ever experienced in my life, and also deserves its own little vloggy bit. So yeah, gonna talk about that in the future. Did we see any free-running Icelandic horses? I saw easily probably 100 to 300 Icelandic horses. Well, that's probably an exaggeration, probably 100. I probably saw 100 horses per every human who was like native to Iceland that I saw. I saw more horses and more sheep than any other living creature on the entire island, and it was quite magical. So yes, I did see some free-running Icelandic horses. We actually got to get out of the car a couple times and stand on the other side of the fence and just watch some as they're laid out. It's so amazing. Just these wildish, some of them probably are tame, but most of them are kind of wild. I was a little sad when I found out why they're kind of wild and what happens to the wild horses later, but we'll ignore that fact for now. But you look at these wild horses and you look at the big fields of green with no trees anywhere that they're in, and the sharp cliffs behind them that just jut up out of the ground like out of nowhere with big, huge waterfalls and streams, and the sun is out and the streams are just glittering with silver down this cliffside, and that's the backdrop that you're looking at, these beautiful colors of these very shaggy Icelandic horses. And it was really magic. It was amazing. So yeah, I did see them, and that was quite the amazing event. And from Iceland, we also saw puffins, which are going to need their own special story, and we saw a humpback whale. Wow.
Did you get that?
On camera. By accident. You can take tours to try to see a humpback whale. We didn't have time. We wanted to do a little drive down to the black sand beach and visit all of the waterfalls on our way back up. And Chips was pretty bummed that we wouldn't see a whale because he really loves whales. And as we climbed up a cliff where he had scoured TripAdvisor to see where we could see puffins for the day, and had like looked at people's pictures to see the timestamps, like, oh, that one was only yesterday, there's puffins at this spot. And I really wanted to see puffins desperately, so he took me there so that I could see puffins. And as we climbed the cliff searching for puffins, we looked to the left, hundreds of feet down in the ocean, and there was a humpback whale breaching out of the water and circling. And it was so magic. That's another time I don't think I've ever seen him happier. So that was amazing, and that'll be for another day too. So we saw the humpback whale, and then we climbed up the cliff. My battery died with my camera, my wildlife camera, taking pictures of the whale. We hadn't seen a puffin for a solid hour. I sighed, he sighed. We get to the top of the cliff, look down, and there was just nothing but puffins. Nothing but these tiny, adorable, beautiful, little magical Atlantic puffins. So from Iceland, he got me a little pufferling, the cutest one we could possibly find, and I will always cherish and remember the time that he sacrificed the attempt to go see humpback whales so that I could see puffins. Then we ended up seeing a whale anyway. And he got me the little puffin, and then on our way out of the Reykjavik airport, we actually found, ta-da, this beautiful ceramic piece that was handmade by one of the people in Iceland, and it looks like a humpback whale. To me, this little piece of lighter blue inside all of the dark blue looks like a whale. And the spot we saw the whale actually had these sharp triangular rocks, and it has a couple little triangle pieces. So I got this piece because I will always remember that magical moment with the whale. And then of course, because I could find it, we got a little pen too, because I love collecting pens. So Iceland was amazing, and that's my little swaggy collection. Oh yeah, and then Chips got me puffin socks. I almost forgot to show off my puffin socks. Like, he really went all the way, and we saw more rainbows than I've ever seen in my entire life, and it was magic, and we're definitely going back.